event is Toledo Bend in Texas. It's event number 4, and I'm excited because I'm in great shape for the year. I'm in 31st place, and the lake is exactly the way I like it. The last time we were here, I finished 12th place throwing a lipless crankbait on deep underwater grass lines. There's a lot of hydrilla in the lake. The lake's at the right level, and I think it's going to fish just about the same way that it did the last time I was here. The water's in the low 50s, so the bushes and the shallow coves and flats aren't going to be really a factor. It's going to be using your electronics, staying out off the bank, and covering a lot of water to catch the fish. A unique thing, though, has happened this week that's going to put a little twist into things. We had that Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, and a lot of debris from the shuttle has actually fallen into the lake. And there's areas that have been quadranted off where they're doing grid searches for the wreckage. And we'll be having to slow down and idle and move around those areas. So typically, you know, the lake would be wide open. Now we may be in an area fishing one day, and the next day it would be off limits. So we have to factor that in. The south end of the lake is where most of the searching's going on. But as far as the fishing's concerned, I think it's going to be big weights, a lot of big fish, and I'm really excited about it. In Texas, 14-inch size limit, a nice 2-pounder, about 15 inches long. That's a good start. All right, that's a good start to the morning. The water's coming up. We've had a little rain, and these bushes are only about 6 or 8 inches deep. But there's a lot of lily pad stems and some scattered stalks of hydrilla that feather out and then drop into the channel. So what's happening, best I can tell, the last day of practice, the fish that I've been catching are just staging in that grass, waiting to move to the bank and spawn. Until the water hits about 58 to 60 degrees, that's probably where they're going to stay too. It seems like slow rolling a spinnerbait, working it through the stalks of grass. If you can go real slow and just kind of milk it through, you can get a few good bites. Yesterday I had one fish that was almost 6.5 pounds. There's one. Oh, man, good fish. All right, yeah. He ate that, so he clocked it. There's a boat right over there. I'm trying to be kind of cool about it, but you know, I mean, when you're this close to other boats, you know, they're gonna see you. But you know, 5 of those, and give me a kicker, I'll be loving life. Just crawling that spinnerbait, just moving it, you know, nice and easy. Right. That's a good start to my day. I'm liking this. Liking this a lot. Just using a tandem willow leaf spinnerbait, just fishing it real slow, just, you know, milking it through those stalks, and man, they're crushing it. No giants, but just good solid keepers. You know, the only bad thing is, you know, there's 2 fish, bang, bang. There's 2 boats right there. So, I mean, it's not like I'm the only one that knows this area. I mean, it's historically a good area. It warms up first. It's, you know, just, you know, one of those places that the fish come up first, and it gets a lot of boat pressure, a lot of fishing pressure. But you got to be where the fish are, you know. There's a lot of places in this lake right now. The north end of this lake is kind of cold and muddy, and there's just not that many fish being caught. The mid-lake south is where most of the grass is, and that's where most of the fish are. You know, one of the things that I found fishing in springtime when the water is in the low 50s, it's cold, you know, the fish are just starting to move up. It's unlike the rest of the year where cloud cover helps. You know, sunshine, we got a good sunny day here. That warms that upper layer of the water up, and the fish bite a lot better on sunny days, seems like, than they do on cloudy days this time of year. Now, if this was summertime or, you know, late spring, early fall, you know, mornings and evenings are best, and cloud cover really helps. But later in the day on sunny days in the springtime, if you can just remember that in your fishing, it'll always bring the fish up shallower, make them bite better, And the afternoon is usually a lot better than the morning. So if you find an area you get a couple bites on in the morning, you go back in the afternoon, a lot of times you can really catch them.
Don't go away. Angling on Tour will be right.
You know, one of the things that a lot of people have difficulty with fishing a spinnerbait early in the year is keeping it slow. You want to keep it along the bottom, bouncing off the cover that's on the bottom where it's grass, lily pad, stems, stumps, what have you. But you got to keep your rod tip low, and you got to just milk that bait through and feel those blades turning. If you move it too fast, those fish, when the water's cold, they're not usually aggressive enough to come up for it. If you keep it real slow, move it along the bottom, they'll bite it. You get a lot of bites, a lot more bites doing that than you will fishing it fast. I see a lot of anglers in the spring fishing a spinnerbait way too fast. And slow rolling is just that. You just rolling that blade real slow, keeping that rod tip down. You know, and you throw it on a 6.5 or 7 foot rod. And you know, I'm using 17-pound strand lines when I'm fishing with, just plain old monofilament line, and just keep your rod tip down and milk that bait through. And you can catch some big fish doing this. In about another week, the water will be up another foot or 1.5 foot, and these fish will be right in the bushes. Then you'll be catching them on a jig, flipping a jig in the bushes. But right now, there's just not enough water in them. The water's not quite warm enough. They're still out here in this cover away from it, this grass cover. You know, a really overlooked type of cover, especially in the springtime when they don't look like much, are lily pad stems. And lily pad stems, early in the year, they just look like brown pencils sticking up out of the water, just brown stalks of nothing. And believe it or not, those fish will move up and start to stage in those shallow pad stems, especially if you've got them adjacent to deep water where they can just pop up on that shallow 1.5 foot, 2 foot flat and sit there on those pad stems. And a lot of times you can take a lipless crankbait, like an LV 500 Lucky Craft or a rattle trap, something like that, and run them through those pad stems real fast, burn them through them and catch them, or just do what I'm doing here, which is slow roll a spinnerbait through them. And you can get some really good stringers of fish doing that. And the reason I like it is because it's an overlooked pattern a lot of times. A lot of people concentrate on wood, they'll concentrate on hydrilla. They don't think about those little brown, nasty-looking pad stems. A lot of little sprigs of grass on the bottom. Not a lot, just a little bit. And early in the year, that doesn't really hurt because they'll move up and set up in that little short stalks of grass right before they move to the bushes or move to the bank. You can work your bait right through it, just kind of crawl it along. That's when you get the bite. I've been breaking it up too a lot. I'm throwing a little lipless crankbait. Been about 50-50. The bite, part of them come off that, the rest of them off the spinnerbait. This week's Angler on Tour tip has to do with not so much what to throw, but where to throw it. It's very important not to be like every other angler and get caught up with shoreline cover. Visual cover draws them in like a magnet, and a lot of times you'll sit your boat where the fish are. This week on Toledo Bend, it was critical to fish the cover outside the visual shoreline cover. Use your electronics, take a look, make sure that there's not something out there that the fish would stage on, because when that water's in the low 50s, that's where they're going to be, not on that shoreline cover. So try that little tip, and I guarantee you in early spring, it'll pay off for you.
Don't go away. Angling on Tour will be right back. Every week.
got a cataract on his eye. Look at that. You see that? He's got a cataract. But he could see good enough to get my bait. Same deal as the ones this morning. Just taking that bait along, coming through that cover, and all of a sudden, man, he just killed it. That's what amazes me. You go so long without a bite, and then you catch one. It's a really nice fish, you know, and they kill it like there's just no tomorrow. That's a good fish. It's a good sign. Starting to warm up a little bit. There we go. That'll work. You know, one thing that I have determined, every bite that I've gotten is on that scattered cover outside the grass and tree line. But more importantly, there's deep water nearby. Right out in the middle of this pocket, it falls right into about 14 feet. And you can see on the depth finder right here, we've got a lot of scattered hydrilla and little clumps here and there, and that's what these fish are on. They're not on that shoreline cover, they're just out, because that water, it may look warm, but it's still cool, and they're hanging back. Oh, that's a nice one. Oh, man, that sucker's pretty heavy. That's what I'm after. That's the one I'm looking for. Oh, gosh. Right. Two of them together, too. And I'll jaw this bad boy. Come on, girl. I'll place it all in that cool water. Crunched it. That is what you need. There's your kicker. Well, on this lake, really, a good stringer will have 5 like that in it, you know, catch 20 pounds. Now, that's 4 bites I've had. That's 4 bites I've had today, but I'm pushing probably 12 pounds with 4 bites. 5 bites, you know, maybe you're up around 15 or 16 pounds. And that's what yesterday's practice was like. You know, I had a 6-pounder, I had a 4-pounder, and I had, you know, 3 or 4 nice 2-pounders. You know, I'd have had 15, 16 pounds. And today I'm right on track for another stringer like that. Look how fed up that girl is. I mean, she's just, you know, just ready for spawn, and her tail's even starting to show a little bit of signs of just good looking fish. Man. Just stout. Down in that grass waiting to come up and spawn. There you go, girl. Cool. 200 yards up that way down the ditch. Caught one, you know, 2.5 pounds, and catch that one. And the ditch, it looks like it runs for several hundred yards down through here. And I'm sitting in 15 right now, but I'm throwing up into 3 with a lot of scattered grass. And that's just textbook this time of year. You got bushes and spawning area inside. You got grass, and then boom, that creek channel that falls off. And it's protected from this wind, you know. The only thing that could get me is like that other area this morning would be a hard north wind. When you're fishing grass with a spinnerbait, that deep grass and slow rolling it, a lot of people get hung up in the grass and they really snap the bait hard. You don't really want to do that. You just want to kind of milk the bait through the grass. If you feel it start to foul in the grass, just a light twitch or snap of your rod tip will free the bait. If you hit it much harder than that, it'll snap the bait, you know, a couple, 3 feet at a time. And a lot of times, just that little quick snap, when it pops off a clump of grass, that's when the fish eats it. Some guys like to just kind of reel right through it, but to me, the only way to really free the blades up is to snap your rod tip just a little bit. I do that naturally. When the bait hits the water, I always snap my rod tip, get the blades turning. You know, if you've ever watched the show, every time I throw a spinnerbait, the first thing I do when the bait hits the water is I snap my rod tip. And it's just from the old days when I used inadequate spinnerbaits that didn't have a ball-bearing swivel, and the only way you could get them started was to snap it. So, you know, all those years of doing that, now it's just a habit. These new baits, you breathe on the blades and they turn. I mean, it doesn't take anything to get the blades to turn, but I just do it out of habit anyway. Oh, man. That's a nice one right there. That's a good fish there too, buddy. They're so cold, these don't bite. Crushed it. That's 5 today, and 3 of them in an area that I can see where I caught the first one down to here about 500 or 600 yards, and 200 of that yards I was throwing that crankbait. And another, that's a good solid 2.5, 2 3/4 pounder. You know, yesterday I got 6 bites, and they weighed big, you know, 15 pounds. Today I've had 5 bites that would probably weigh 13 and a half pounds. That's solid even on Toledo Bend. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm not saying I'm excited. I'm not hammering them. I know how easy it would be to go out here and maybe get 2 or 3 bites. But, you know, I'm getting the right kind of bites. And I think I've got it figured out pretty much the type of water to look for. It's been very consistent. I've only really found 4 places where I can get a bite. I mean, I've fished, you're seeing the best of it. You know, I've fished just miles of water that has been non-productive. But there's, you know, a couple areas yesterday and a couple areas today that I feel like if I get in them and I stay with them and just, you know, really work hard, that I can get, you know, a good solid limit. And, you know, 12, 13, 14 pounds a day, it's going to be right up there. It may not make that top 12, but it's going to be a real good money finish for sure. And you get one of those big lucky bites, one of them 7-pounders to throw in the bag each day, and you're right there, right where you need to be. Oh, clouds are starting to roll in. You know, that's one thing that has me a little concerned is they're calling for some pretty rude weather the next couple of days. And again, springtime, you know, you gotta deal with that. And I got a feeling that I'm going to see some interesting changes day to day. You got to adjust with the conditions. And I got a feeling I'm going to have to adjust to them. And with that, it's getting late, and I have got a long, rough boat ride in. So I'm going to pack up and head out. Found a good spot, I do believe, though. Ought to be able to catch me 12 or 13 pounds in here. Maybe get lucky and catch a big one. You know, one of the things I like about this kind of tournament is you don't need a lot of bites to do well. 5 bites a day, you could have a really good stringer. And I'm doing something that I like to do. I like slow rolling that spinnerbait, watching that grass on my depth finder, and it's something that I just feel comfortable doing. It's a good spring pattern for me. So I got a pretty good feeling about this one. I'm not saying I'm overly confident, but unless something drastic changes with the weather, I think I can catch a solid stringer each day. Maybe not a top 12 stringer, but a good solid paycheck finish. You know, this tournament for me was kind of like a roller coaster ride. You know, I got off and I was dizzy and it was over, and I'm not sure really what happened. I went out the first day and I pretty much stuck to 2 of my primary areas, and I caught 7 or 8 keepers and called a few times, but I only had 11 pounds of bass. I never got a big bite like I did in practice. But again, enough bites that I felt comfortable, and I was about middle of the field after the first day. And the second day we had a horrendous storm come through, so bad that they canceled the day of fishing because of the high winds and the lightning and just the low visibility, which they rarely do in Bassmasters. So they put us back a day, and the third day the wind shifted heavy out of the north, and I was able to fish my areas. It wasn't like that it blew so bad that it really should have trashed the areas. I would have thought that I could have gotten bit. The water temperature dropped a couple degrees because the wind was funneling in there, but it was just like I was fishing a different lake. And you know, I tried all of my best areas, and I couldn't get a bite. I was in the first flight, so I was due in early, and right towards the end of the day, the sun popped out, and I caught the only 2 bass that I caught for the day, and my partner caught one. So, you know, it was one of those deals where the early draw probably hurt me, and ended up with about 14 pounds for the tournament. The money cut was 20, so it put me in the lower 1/3 of the field, and I dropped from 31st place to about 70th place. Quite a big drop. But there's a lot of tournaments, you know, with a 175-point tournament, you know, you could turn that around pretty quick. The next event is Lake Eufaula. You know, we'll be up there in about 10 days. I've got a Bass University to do, and then I'm going to go there. And it's my kind of lake. It's got a lot of shoreline cover. The fish ought to be moving up, you know, and I've had some good March tournaments there. So
hopefully, you know, I can turn this thing around. You know, I'm not beat yet. The majority of the guys in the top 12 that did well were basically following the same pattern that I was using. They were fishing that hydrilla that was outside the bushes, and a lot of them were using lipless crankbaits, the red crankbait, and a lot of them were slow rolling the spinnerbait. I think the bigger stringers were coming on the slow rolling the spinnerbait. But the key, I think, was to have an area that stayed protected, and just, it was an area that had the bigger fish in it, and the guys just stayed in it, and they got a key stretch in there, and they just milked it for what it was worth. And again, you only need 5 bites when they're good fish. So, you know, a lot of times it's area. A lot of tournaments aren't won on patterns as much as they are areas, and I think that was a key thing. You had to be in the right area.